In the year 1899, in a fog-covered town called Saint-Benoît, nestled deep within the grey valleys of northern France, there stood a forgotten clock shop at the corner of Rue des Cendres. Its windows were blackened with soot, its gears rusted, its walls whispering of a time when people still believed that clocks could hold souls. The shop belonged to Monsieur Émile Laurent, a man of precision and madness, a clockmaker whose hands were steadier than his mind. They said his clocks could breathe, that they moved even when unwound, and that each tick echoed with the heartbeats of the dead. He lived there with his only daughter, Élodie, a pale girl with raven hair, who never aged past 16. Some claimed she was a miracle. Others whispered she was not alive at all, the whisper of time. Every night, as the fog crept through the streets, the sound of ticking grew louder, not from the clocks, but from the walls themselves. Élodie would sit by the shop window, staring at the tower across the square, the great cathedral clock of Saint-Benoît, whose face had not turned for 50 years. Her father promised he would fix it one day, but that day never came. Instead, he worked in secret, behind the locked basement door, where the smell of oil mixed with something faintly metallic and sweet. Sometimes villagers passing by could hear whispers, like the murmur of a woman's voice coming from beneath the floorboards. "Papa," Élodie once said softly, "who is she that speaks when you work?" Her father froze, his trembling hand gripping the tiny cogwheel in his palm. "You must never listen, ma fille," he whispered. "That voice is only time remembering." The clock with the beating heart. On her 17th winter, the snow fell thick over Saint-Benoît. Monsieur Laurent unveiled his newest masterpiece, a clock shaped like a woman's chest, its pendulum hidden beneath glass ribs, its center pulsing with a soft red glow. He called it La Mère du Temps, the mother of time. When he wound it, the entire shop trembled. The hands moved in reverse, and for one dreadful moment, every other clock in the room stopped. That night, Élodie dreamed of her mother, the one she never knew, standing beside the clock, her skin translucent, her eyes full of sorrow. "Time is not what he told you," she whispered. "When it stops, I will wake." Weeks later, a traveler came to town, Monsieur Alaric Devereux, a writer from Paris searching for forgotten legends. He heard rumors of the living clock and the pale girl who never left her window. He found the shop easily. Its doorbell didn't ring when he entered. Instead, the clocks all sighed. Élodie appeared behind the counter, her face ghostly under the lamplight. "Papa is busy," she said softly, "but he knows you're coming." When Alaric looked at her, he felt something strange, like déjà vu, or the feeling of waking up inside someone else's dream. He returned every day, under the pretext of writing his book. And every day, the clocks seemed to watch him more closely. One stormy evening, Alaric found the basement door slightly open. He descended the narrow stairs, the air thick with oil and decay. There, beneath flickering candles, stood hundreds of dismantled dolls, gears, and glass eyes. And in the center, a mannequin that looked exactly like Élodie. It was made of porcelain, wrapped in torn fabric, with wires running through its spine, connected to the great mother clock. Her face was half finished, but her lips moved. "Help me," she whispered. Élodie appeared behind him. Her eyes glimmered like clock springs. "You shouldn't have seen this," she said. Her voice was calm, almost kind, but hollow. Monsieur Laurent arrived, his face pale and furious. "You fool," he shouted. You've disturbed her time." In the chaos, the mother clock began to turn backward, its gears grinding, its glow pulsing faster. The mannequin's chest began to rise and fall. Elodie stepped closer to Alaric. "I was never born," she said. "I was built from the bones and heart of my mother." The clock behind her let out a final, dreadful tick and stopped. Time itself in Saint-Benoît froze. The snowflakes outside hung suspended in the air. Monsieur Laurent fell to his knees, clutching his chest. "I only wanted her to live," he sobbed. But Elodie only stared at him, not with hatred, but with sorrow. The walls began to crack, gears bursting from their housings. The mother clock split open, revealing a heart, red and wet, beating inside. "Father," Elodie said, "you gave her my time, and mine is ending." As she touched the heart, her porcelain skin began to crumble like ash. The walls bled rust, and all the clocks screamed, thousands of ticking voices crying in unison. Alaric ran, but the shop seemed endless. Hallways looping back, faces of clocks watching, whispering, "Time remembers. Time never forgets." When the first light of dawn reached Saint-Benoît, the clock shop was gone. Only a crater remained, filled with broken glass and silver dust. 50 years later, in 1949, a young boy exploring the ruins found a pocket watch buried beneath the soil. Inside, behind the cracked glass, was a tiny portrait of a girl with black hair. The second hand still moved, slowly, backward. When he wound it, faintly, ever so faintly, a whisper came. "Papa." The boy dropped the watch, but for the rest of his life, every clock he owned stopped at 11:11. They say time heals all wounds, but in Saint-Benoît, time bleeds instead. The clockmaker wanted eternity, and eternity answered by taking everything he loved. Years after the boy found the pocket watch in 1949, the object passed from hand to hand like a cold rumor. Each owner, farmers, seamstresses, a lowly schoolteacher, felt the same small pressure at the base of their skull when the watch clicked. The faintest syllable, barely audible, like an infant calling a father. Some replaced their clocks and moved houses. Some locked the watch away. But none could resist peeking at its cracked face in the quiet hours. At 11:11, the second hand brushed past the tiny portrait of the raven-haired girl, and a sigh slipped from the silver glass, soft as a lullaby, heavy as a debt. Alaric Devereux, the writer who had once watched the clocks sigh, left Saint-Benoît with ink in his veins and a notebook full of tremors. He wrote a slender book about the shop, about Elodie and her porcelain twin, about Monsieur Laurent's prayer to time. The book sold poorly at first, then strangely well to those who loved the obscure. Readers reported nightmares of gears clutched like throats, and the recurring image of a crater in a square. Alaric grew gaunter with each edition, as if the act of writing drew the breath from his chest. He would sometimes pause mid-sentence and whisper, "It remembers." The town's rituals. Saint-Benoît learned to live with absences. Mothers hummed different lullabies, stopping when the village clock's hands trembled. A few elders formed a small clandestine society that met beneath the ruined square. They burnt small watches at dusk and recited names in the same cadence as the gears. They believed a tally must be kept, a balance made for the taking of time. People who attended those midnight burnings woke changed, voices quieter, eyes farther away. Rumor named their practice the counting of the hours, an attempt to bargain with whatever had answered Monsieur Laurent's prayer. A child born 2 generations later arrived in the world with a peculiar trait, an echoing laugh that always came a second behind, as if listening to itself. Doctors scoffed until they noted how clocks in the nursery stopped at 11:11 whenever the child slept. The family, descended from one who had once owned the watch, kept a small wooden box under the mattress, and spoke little. That laughter would sometimes resolve into a whisper that called a father's name nobody alive remembered, the distant cities. Whispers traveled along rails and rivers. Strange synchronies cropped up in distant towns, clocks stopping at 11:11 for a breath, then resuming. Clocks in a theatre in Marseille falling silent mid-performance. A lighthouse lamp in Brittany stuttering, and sailors reporting that the sea hummed with metallic sorrow. Scholars wrote of localized time anomalies and called them curiosities. Priests muttered about debts. Others simply decided not to speak of it aloud. Monsieur Laurent's vanishing revisited. Though the crater marked the shop's end, fragments of Monsieur Émile Laurent persisted. A single glove found nailed to a beam, a soot-smudged ledger listing times rather than customers, and once, on a stormy night decades later, a faint tapping from an old street lamp that sounded like Morse for a father's name. Some swore they saw a silhouette pass between raindrops, a man hunched, carrying a ruined clock like a cross. His face was always turned away, and those who tried to follow lost their way among crooked alleys, finding themselves at dawn miles from where they began. The collector appears. In a train carriage bound for Saint-Benoît, a collector of curiosities arrived. Madame Valérie, the woman in raven feathers known in old whispers. She carried a satchel of glass jars and tiny hourglasses. Where she walked, clocks seemed to hesitate mid-tick, as if deferring to her. She spoke softly to the town magistrate and offered to help close the ledger of debts at a price. Some believed she had the authority to collect what time demanded. Others thought her a darker thing that would trade one life for another's pause. The town argued. The crater watched. Ledger closed. They tried to close the ledger. The counting of the hours burned names and watches in ritual. Madame Valérie stood long and silent as the flames devoured brass. For one night the air cleared and the clocks in Saint-Benoît chimed with ordinary cadence. People wept and embraced, believing the ledger sealed. But in the quiet that followed, a single childless pair of hands from the crowd found themselves clutching warmth where no watch burned. A soft spot in a pocket, a faint pulse that was not heart nor machine. The boy who had once stopped his clocks at 11:11 would grow old, and his eyes, once bright, would close to a world that still whispered of a porcelain face at the edge of every hour. Time, as ever, kept a scrap of Elodie,